As I looked over the English paper I was about to turn into Dr. Lawler, it was my review of the book Winesburg, Ohio, a book that just about every freshman at Western Maryland College had to read. I felt pretty good about the paper. Sure, it was my first college essay. It was freshman year, but I felt like I really got what the author was trying to say. I was pretty sure that my college professor would agree with most of my more compelling points. So I was in a hopeful mood when at the end of class, he walked around the room handing back our papers. He put them on our desks upside down, and I wasn't sure, but I thought I detected a slight pause as he hovered over my desk, as if to say, "This one is special." As he walked away, I turned just one corner of the essay over very briefly, but long enough to see that the front page was covered with a sea of red. Red ink. And even though it was my first college essay, I had a feeling that lots of red ink was not a good thing. It was 10 minutes later at the desk of my dorm room that I finally had the courage to take a good long look at my 3-page paper. The grade at the bottom of the last page looked at first like an A+, using a lowercase a. I thought, well, that's, But then I saw that the small lowercase a was in fact a D. D+ on my first writing assignment in college. I began scouring the margins of my paper, the sea of red, for whatever might have been the cause of the plus. Isn't that great? But to no avail. I think it might have just been that I had the margins correct. D+ was the grade. And right below it, a terse 2-word note that said, "See me." See me. Which I was very eager to do, because you see, there was something very wrong here. There was a problem here. Something was amiss. Apparently, Dr. Lawler did not get the memo. The memo that said that I was an honor roll student in high school. Sure, I had taken standard English in my senior year instead of advanced English, because my friend had said that I didn't have to write any papers if I took standard English. All we do in class is read. But I got an A in that class. "Dr. Lawler, we have a problem here," was what I was thinking as I climbed the steps up to Dr. Lawler's office. I was busy preparing my speech, which was going to be about how he had gotten things just a little mixed up. We have a problem here, I was thinking. Let's look at this again, I was thinking. But then, as he invited me into his office with a, "Come, sit down," the look of sympathy that was written all over his face, the look of sympathy he had for a student who didn't know how to write a simple essay and was going to have to learn that skill very quickly. When I was confronted with the kindness in his eyes, and when he said, "Let's have a look," all, or at least most, of my hubris melted away. One red mark at a time, one dangling participle at a time, Dr. Lawler began to teach me in the remedial way how to write. And as I look back on it now, that may have been one of the most important hours of my life. At that time, I was going to be a doctor and didn't need to know how to write very much. But as it turns out, things worked out differently. Sometimes it's important to believe that everything is going to be okay with our lives and that nothing is going to go wrong or off script. We need to be assured of this when we are children. Parents, do not look down at their beautiful babies or their curious toddlers or even their first graders walking off to school for the first time and say things like, "Be careful when you run into that bully." Or, "Remember, you don't know nearly as much as you think you do." Or, "One of these days, your great Aunt Myrtle is going to pass away, so you better just be prepared for it." There are times when it is appropriate for us to believe that our story is actually going to pan out just the way we plan for it to, with no possibilities of failure. On our flight to Hawaii, we do not want the attendant to say something like, "Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. We are about to fly over 2,500 miles of ocean in search of a tiny series of islands. But not to worry. Just about all the time, everything goes according to plan." There are appropriate times for us to believe that our story is going to turn out just as we planned it. That the professor will, in fact, be blown away by the way we put words together and by the power of our intellect. But when things go wrong with our story, when failure creeps in, when the tragic becomes the order of the day, when we mess up and we're facing 4 years of college, those are the real precious moments, right? Because those moments are when we are given the invitation to grow into a new place. "See me" was what Dr. Lawler had written on my first college essay. Jesus was a little more dramatic than Simon Peter. I believe it was, "Get behind me, Satan." I'm glad Dr. Lawler chose to see me. "For you are setting your mind not on divine things, but on human things. Get behind me, Satan." It was a pretty stern rebuke for Jesus to use. He only said it once in his whole ministry. It was D+ material. "You're killing me, Peter." It was Peter getting everything so very wrong. And this happened only minutes after he had gotten everything so very right. Jesus had asked all his disciples, "Who do people say that I am?" They had all reported back what people were saying. Some say John the Baptist, some say Elijah, some say another prophet. "Fair enough," Jesus says. Long pause. "But who do you say that I am?" Jesus looks at them. I imagine there was a bit of a silence until Peter blurted it out, "You are the Messiah!" And that answer was so right. It was so right it almost caught Jesus off guard. "Peter," he said, "don't tell anyone else you just said that." Peter's answer was so right, and it's been so right for so many years. Peter had to be proud of himself. Jesus is the Messiah, and I am his right-hand man. Peter had to be full of himself, maybe even. And then Jesus began to explain what it really meant for him to be called the Messiah. Talk about suffering. Talk about being rejected and being killed and being raised again. Then Peter, who maybe felt like he was on a roll, Peter, it says, took Jesus aside and began to rebuke him. "Jesus, we have a problem here." And that was when Jesus, looking at all the disciples, rebukes Peter. "Get behind me, Satan. Get behind me. See me after class." It was an epic fail on Peter's part. It happened when Peter was so full of himself. It brought Peter back down to reality, and it may have been the most important moment in his life because it helped him understand the true nature of Jesus' ministry, of Jesus' messiahship, of his servanthood, and it helped him understand what it meant to be called the Messiah. These failure moments, these times when our stories take a turn we could have never expected, these are the moments, painful as they are, that carry the power to really save us. Because these are the moments when the veil comes off, and with the help of others, we see ourselves as we really are. In his book, Falling Upward, Richard Rohr calls the knowledge that emerges out of our tragedies and failures and missteps, he calls it humbled knowledge. Hubris, he says, is precisely the refusal to be humbled by what should have been humbling. He goes on to say Jesus is never really upset by sinners. He hangs out with sinners. He gets along with sinners. He's got a soft spot in his heart for those who've messed up. Thanks be to God. But what seems to always draw his particular wrath, more than anything else, is people who do not think they are sinners. Hubris is what seems to make Jesus especially angry. Which makes me think that those of us who try to follow Jesus ought not worry as much about falling short as about refusing to admit it. How hard is it for us to admit we're wrong? How has hubris gotten us off the track? Where do we see hubris alive and well in our world? The good news is that we have a Messiah, a Savior, whose triumph was seen as an epic failure. The good news is that the God Jesus points us to, is a God who is a fellow sufferer who always understands. A fellow sufferer who always understands. The bad news is that our world is soaked in hubris. We're all so convinced we're all so right. So many of us, I feel, approach life like freshman English class students, prepared to enlighten the world with our superior wisdom and sharp skills, when the reality is that we have so much to learn from those who are wiser than we are. And there are so many people out there wiser than we are. Don't you think that following Jesus, at least every now and then, means experiencing an epic fail and then trying to figure out what it means? Sometimes statements of faith start out with "I believe," but other times they begin with something more like, "I was wrong, and I'm so sorry." Sometimes the Christ is the one who is so proud of who we are. Other times the Christ is the one who writes at the bottom of our most cherished work, in red ink, "See me."